आपको ऑनलाइन स्कूल पसंद है या असली स्कूल पसंद है?
असली से,
क्यों?
क्योंकि ऑनलाइन में मज़ा नहीं आता।
मज़ा नहीं आता, क्यों?
ऐसे
बोल आप जो भी बोलना है आप बोल। It's been 1.5 years since schools around the world have been forced to close their doors due to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to UNICEF, schools for more than 16 million children globally have been completely shut for most of the last academic year. As the death rate climbed, my school was quick to adapt to our rapidly changing world. I had all the support I could possibly need. Remote learning tools had been put in place, infrastructure and strategies on how me as a child of my school could learn in the most effective way possible. Along with all of this, I also had my family every step of the way. However, through it all, I couldn't help but wonder, if I had somehow not have access to any of this, none of the privileges I have access to simply because of circumstances I cannot control, how would I cope? Was all that I could ask. Unfortunately, this hypothetical question of mine is but a reality for millions of children from low-income backgrounds in India. How are they coping? And how much worse has their educational crisis become? Plato believed that education was a means for both individual and social justice. To achieve social justice, he argues, we must all work in harmony. This, he opines, can be achieved by equal educational opportunities for all. Without this, we may see the emergence of a tyrannical society ran by unqualified people. The importance of education is nothing unheard of, which is why now more than ever, people and governments are willing to invest in a quality education or educational opportunities and infrastructure for all. However, it is important to realize that ultimately, no matter how much you spend or theorize, it all boils down to what actually happens in the classroom. It is with this intention that I decided to examine an actual classroom to see how the learning is actually taking place amidst the COVID crisis. Over the next 30 minutes, I will be presenting a case study. A COVID classroom through the eyes of a 16-year-old right before you. This is a case study of a brother and a sister who, despite the COVID crisis and all the difficulties that came with it, try their best to keep their fire for learning alive. In order to conduct the study effectively, I decided to try and learn the fundamentals of and train myself in educational research. From my understanding, one of the most critical aspects of educational research, or research in general, is research ethics. The inherent need to respect people's data and privacy is especially relevant here when working with children. Which is why, even though I have taken the informed consent of both parents and children, I have chosen to keep their identities anonymous. I felt that perhaps their consent was tainted by the fact that they may have felt compelled to do so. Furthermore, I believe that their identities are irrelevant in comparison to their story, as it is a story shared by millions of children all around the world. I have thus given them new names to protect their identity. I have named the girl Asha, which means hope in Hindi. This represents the hope that is still there despite all of the difficulties that have come in their educational journey. The boy I've named Bala, which represents the strength that they have and will need in their educational journey. In his thesis, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire states that to be educated is to escape from the necrophilic clutches of oppression. He continues this line of thought by saying that to question is what humanizes us. On the first day of recording, I was eager to see the power of education at first hand. With excitement and slight apprehension, I walked up the stairs. Their home consisted of one room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. Whatever was overflowing in terms of this household was neatly compartmentalized into the carry bags that hung off the wall, and of course, there was one small window to see the outside world. And in the midst of it all was a classroom that many people would not be able to recognize. Whilst considering online learning, our focus is fixated on the mobile rather than the learning environment that it rests in. Friedrich Vogel constantly stressed on the learning environment of a child, stating that it should be stimulating and also allowed the child to learn from their experiences. The unconventional setting of this house starkly contrasts that of an evening playing outside with friends. This affects not only a child's learning, but also happiness. To make matters worse, I discovered that unregulated construction had been going on right outside the building, further disrupting learning.
देखो केरला का दूसरा नाम है गॉड्स ओन कंट्री। गॉड्स मतलब भगवान। यहाँ पे बोलते कि भगवान बसते हैं। सबको सुनाई दे रहा है?
Kerala is a state in the southernmost part of India. It is known for its tranquility, and because of its natural beauty, it is also known as God's own country. Today, the children are learning about Kerala. Despite the class starting on a good note, with the teacher describing the idyllic, calming nature of Kerala, there soon is an opposing atmosphere in the classroom.
आपकी तुरंत कोई क्लास साइंस की बुक नहीं है, आप क्लास ज्वाइन कीजिए जल्दी से। आपकी तुरंत आ गए हो? सबको सुनाई दे रहा है?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. मैम आवाज नहीं आ रही। मैम आवाज नहीं आ रही। बोलो मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही। मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही। मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही।
The children waited patiently for their teacher to come back. However, due to internet problems, she wasn't able to join. And thus, 15 minutes of a 30-minute class were gone.
Okay, now I am showing you how Kerala is. चलो मेरी गलती है, मैंने आप लोगों को केरला अभी दिखाती हूँ।
The teacher apologizes and continues on with her lesson. But the lesson is hit with another roadblock. Some students are still unable to hear what the teacher has to say about Kerala.
सबसे ज़्यादा लोकप्रिय जगह है केरला। केरला में सबसे ज़्यादा नारियल का पौधा और पानी मिलता है।
In a way, this class can be considered a microcosm of the various challenges posed by COVID. What deeply disturbed me was the fact that it was a possibility that these children weren't learning anything in a day. In this scene, we can see Bala diligently studying. However, what is not shown is Asha waiting patiently for her turn to learn. I was incredibly surprised to see that only one mobile was shared between the two children, causing both of them to miss critical lessons in their education. It is also worthy to note that it is the mother's mobile that is being used, and not the father's, even though both of them are out of the house working. This subtle difference is also reflected in the children's learning, with Asha's negligence and Bala's priority. India has among the world's highest gender gap in access to technology. Only 21% of women in India are mobile internet users, in contrast to the 42% of men who do. The subtle difference of priority in Asha and Bala's home might not be an explicit decision, but it is without a doubt that the COVID pandemic is inducing and further increasing gender disparity among low-income families.
Are you in the class?
According to the National Statistical Office, only 38.7% people in India have completed secondary school or higher education. This is an incredibly low number. To keep children in school, the government has attempted to incentivize schooling through schemes such as the midday meal, where students are served lunch free of cost, or schemes where they build separate toilets for girls. All these programs aim to incentivize children to go to school. However, with the COVID-19 pandemic, schooling infrastructure has collapsed, leaving the burden of motivation on the parents, many of whom are working to sustain their family. As mentioned before, as the class is starting for the day, children are failing to show up, leaving the burden also on the teachers. As the class goes by, it becomes apparent that this is not anything new. To accurately take attendance, the teacher then asks her student to put on their camera to ensure that they're really there. Fortunately, the teacher seems to be very enthusiastic about teaching her kids about why they should come to class. Despite the adversities, the teacher does not give up. Despite the many anecdotal evidences against teachers in India, we can clearly see that this teacher is making an effort to praise their good work. However, whatever attempts the teacher has to encourage her children are undermined by the classroom setting.
बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगा। हम
अपने ना टूट गई थी इससे मिल गए।
यही तो विद्या सबके साथ हो रहा है। कितने लोगों का नौकरी चला गया, फिर मिल रहा है, फिर आप लोगों को नई तरीके से जिंदगी शुरू करना पड़ेगा। हम देखो आपके साथ हमेशा है। मैं बोल रही हूँ जिनको रिचार्ज खत्म हो रहा है मुझे पर्सनली बताओ, क्या मुझे रिचार्ज करवाना है, मैं उसके रिचार्ज कल वंश ने बताया, मैं वंश का नाम ले चुकी हूँ और रामपुरादास का रिचार्ज करवा दी, सोनाली का रिचार्ज करवाई हूँ। तो आप लोगों के साथ तो विद्या हमेशा खड़े हैं। राशन के लिए नाम दे रही हूँ कि इसको राशन मिले, उसको राशन मिले। तो ऐसा आप लोग मेरे साथ कोऑपरेट नहीं करोगे तो मैं कैसे आप लोगों को आगे लेके जाऊँ? ओके बाय 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 बाय, जाओ क्लास में, बाय बाय बाय।
The school day came to an end. However, I couldn't help but notice a lack of laughter, banter, giggles and note passing between friends, or reunions with parents. It all seemed rather anticlimactic. The end of school has always been something to look forward to, a time where you can meet with your friends and go somewhere. But when the call ended and the voices fade, it seemed as though it had never happened at all. When I was observing the classroom of the children, I was reminded of my own experience with online education. Like most students, remote learning had taken a toll on me. I felt isolated, alone, and unable to learn or focus as well as I did before. It hit me that I would probably be having my final year of school inside the four walls of my room. As I was struggling, I realized that if I myself was struggling so much, how much would others be who have it worse than me? This project thus served almost as my strength, giving me a purpose amidst all the chaos around me.
We start to tell stories from nursery school until the end of our life. We tell stories about what we do.
Since then, I have diverted all my energy into making this documentary possible. As we go back to the classroom, we see the problems are still present. Unregulated construction is still affecting the children's learning. The mobile phone that the children share keeps getting calls and notifications. And voices keep cutting out due to the internet.
Yes, ma'am.
And children are still struggling to join the class.
Good morning, ma'am. मैं लेट हो गई क्यों? मैं बाइक से आ रही थी इसलिए मैं किसी और के घर में थी, यहाँ पर गई थी।
A reward system used in class is essential in encouraging children to learn. As the various challenges continued, Bala faced a problem that even though he answered correctly, his answer was not heard. This can be especially demotivating for children, which could potentially cause an increase in dropout rates.
RALA, इससे क्या वर्ड बनाएंगे? सही वर्ड बताओ। कौन बताएगा? जल्दी से बताओ।
मैम अलार्म। मैम अलार्म। मैम अलार्म ही लगेगा। मैम कैसे?
जी बताइए नेक्स्ट क्या होगा, इसका आंसर बताओ मुझे।
क्या आप बच्चों का पढ़ाई में मदद कर पाते हैं या?
नहीं, मैं बिल्कुल मदद नहीं कर पाती.
Research from the National Coalition for Parent Involvement in Education shares that, no matter their income or background, students with involved parents are more likely to have higher grades and test scores, attend school regularly, have better social skills, and show improved behavior and adapt well to school. However, because of the fact that both the mother and father are out of the house for most of the day to work, parental engagement is jeopardized. Additionally, leaving children with a mobile phone unattended can bring many risks not only in their education but also in their development.
तो मैं काम करती हूँ, बच्चे कई बार मोबाइल देखते हैं, क्लास मिस करते, पढ़ाई नहीं करते, तो दिक्कत आ रही है. जो सामने में फेस टू फेस पढ़ाई होता है वो सही होता है ना. ऑनलाइन में तो बच्चे थोड़ा ज़्यादा वो कर लेते हैं, ढंग से पढ़ नहीं पाते. चलो मम्मी नहीं है, पापा नहीं है, मोबाइल देख लेते हैं.
She is very concerned about her children's education.
बच्चों को तो पढ़ाना चाहिए. हम लोग नहीं पढ़े तो अभी तो एहसास हो रहे, जो नहीं पढ़े तो ये दिन देखना पड़ रहा है. लेकिन मैं कोशिश करके पढ़ाऊँगी बच्चों को. लाइफ बनने के लिए पढ़ाई बहुत ज़रूरी है.
Though the mother knows the importance of education, she gets a bit uncomfortable when asked about her own. और आपने पढ़ाई की है?
मैंने हाँ पढ़ाई 6 तक की है.
और क्यों छोड़ी आपने पढ़ाई?
क्योंकि कम उम्र में मेरी शादी हो गई थी, तो फिर इसीलिए ससुराल वाले पढ़ने नहीं दिए, छुड़ा दिए.
और आपकी शादी कब हुई थी?
मैं उस टाइम 13-14 के आसपास थी.
और बच्चे कौन से स्कूल जाते हैं? The name of the school has been removed for the family's privacy. आपके हिसाब से स्कूल कैसा है?
स्कूल तो बहुत अच्छा है. टीचर देखभाल करते हैं, बच्चे को अच्छे से पढ़ाते लिखाते हैं, टाइम बाय टाइम सब कुछ करते हैं.
Asha and Bala's mother is very invested in her children's education, knowing their exact timings of school and subjects. In fact, as mentioned before, even the mobile the children use is hers.
टाइम होता था, मतलब 7:30 बजे यहाँ से निकलते थे, 8 बजे क्लास, 1 बजे करेक्ट 1:05 में छुट्टी हो जाती थी. बाकी उसी में इंग्लिश, मैथ, हिंदी सबका सब्जेक्ट अलग अलग, सबकी क्लास अलग अलग. क्लास वही रहते थे, पर टीचर सब अलग अलग जाते थे क्लास में.
Unlike their mother, their father never went to school. He, because of the economic pressure, has to stay outside the house for most of the day, which means that he left the educational concerns largely with the mother. क्या आप बच्चों का पढ़ाई में मदद कर पाते हैं या?
जी मैं तो नहीं कर पाता हूँ, वही डांटता हूँ जो पढ़ो बैठो.
तो आप कब जाते हो काम पे और कब वापस आते हो?
मैं 9 साढ़े 8 बजे निकल जाता हूँ.
और वापस कब आते हो?
वापस कभी बहुत कम 6 बजे तक आता हूँ, नहीं तो 9 बजे ही आता हूँ रात.
As the children's school day starts, the father has to leave for work. Despite being unable to be there, he still wants his children to be educated. आपने पढ़ाई की है?
नहीं पढ़ाई नहीं, पढ़ा नहीं, मुझे बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ता है. वो पढ़ेंगे कुछ करेंगे, मुझे बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो जाता है नहीं पढ़ा तो.
और आपका काम क्या है?
काम है टाइल्स का. काम का यही नुकसान हुआ, जो कोरोना हो गया तो बहुत लोग घर चले गए, और उसके लिए फिर काम धाम बंद हो गया. फिर बीच में लॉकडाउन हो गया, काम काज चलाने. जब बच्चे स्कूल जाते रहते हैं तो वहाँ अच्छे पढ़ते लिखते हैं. ये ऑनलाइन पे उतना बच्चों को समझ में नहीं पाते हैं कभी.
As the children continued to study, the COVID situation in Delhi had gotten worse.
What we're seeing in India, it's terrifying, isn't it?
These are terrible scenes from India, and they're really showing us all what this virus can do if it takes off.
With the knowledge that school wasn't going to be opening anytime soon, morale was low at home. As Asha prepares for her class, Bala helps her sister log in. Today, Asha has a lesson about health and safety.
Good morning.
मैम जी मैम जो कल आपने फर्स्ट एड वाला कराया था मैम आप उसके फोटो खींच के हमारे फोन में भेज सकते हैं हाँ बेटा कैसा भेज सकते मैंने भेजी नहीं है ना आप सबको आज में भेज
Technical issues arise, but people continue to power through.
मैम मेरा हो गया.
ठीक है बेटा
Asha sincerely does her work
बस क्वेश्चन है
as Bala waits outside.
अभी क्या होगा तो सिर्फ जॉब करके फिर से बोला तब भी नहीं हुआ तो.
कोई बात हो जाता है
आप कॉपी कहाँ पे?
Despite the various disturbances, Asha copies down each word with dedication.
मैम बस मेरा आखिरी बचा है हाँ जी दूसरा कोई टाइम है या नहीं है बेटा
मैम मैं टाइम नहीं देखा था.
इतनी लेट आओगे ना कल क्लास में मैंने एब्सेंट लगा दिया आपसे कभी कभी रीजन होता है किसी का जेन्युइन को समझ में आता है लेकिन हर बार का नहीं होता ना ऐसे
Attendance seems to be a continuing problem. When Asha's class finishes, it is now Bala's turn for studying. Over the past few weeks, I've recorded the various challenges that the students had faced during their online education. However, today, it was the first time that I got to see a good lesson. A lesson where I felt the children had learned something and had been rewarded for their good work. Today, Bala was learning maths. The children started to do some word problems.
Okay. So, इतने birds were sitting in a tree. एक पेड़ में 2948 प्लस करते हैं
मैम इसका आंसर है 6015.
ओके वेरी गुड मैं अभी देखती हूँ किसने बोला 60 होगा सॉरी 7 नहीं 6 होगा सॉरी बेटा
यस मैम.
6015
यस मैम.
वेरी गुड नाउ लास्ट लाइन में लिखो
As Bala sat with a smile on his face, the problems of the classroom still persisted.
वेरी गुड मॉर्निंग रोहन इतना लेट क्यों
मैम आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
हेलो किसको आवाज नहीं आ रही है बेटा आपका नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम है आपका नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम है और दूसरे बच्चों को आ रहा है मेरी आवाज
यस मैम.
यस मैम.
अगर एक बच्चे को नहीं आ रहा है उसका मतलब है नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम
आप रेडी हो?
हाँ.
आप कितने साल के हो?
11 years.
9.
आपका फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट कौन सा है?
मेरा फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट इंग्लिश.
इंग्लिश.
आप बड़े होके आप क्या बनना चाहते हो?
बड़े होके मैं डॉक्टर.
क्यों बनना चाहते हो? ऐसे
क्योंकि मुझे हमेशा से डॉक्टर बनना ही पसंद था.
और स्कूल कितने बजे लगता है?
ऑनलाइन या असली?
When taking their interviews, I noticed that Asha and Bala refer to physical school as Asli school. This could possibly suggest that they don't consider online school as real at all. ऑनलाइन और असली भी? आप पहले ऑनलाइन का।
ऑनलाइन तो 9 बजे स्टार्ट हो जाता है, 9 से मेरा 9:30 होता है, 9 से 9:30 मैथ होता है, उसके बाद 9:30 से 10 इंग्लिश होता है। थर्सडे और फ्राइडे साइंस और हिंदी क्लास होता है।
अच्छा, और बस ये दोनों ही क्लास होते हैं या और भी होता है?
बस ये दोनों।
His answer meant that each child was learning for only 1 hour a day, half an hour for each class. आपको ऑनलाइन स्कूल पसंद है या असली स्कूल पसंद है?
असली स्कूल पसंद है।
असली स्कूल।
क्यों?
क्योंकि ऑनलाइन में मज़ा नहीं आता।
क्योंकि असली स्कूल में सामने पढ़ाई होता है, ऑनलाइन स्कूल में दूर से पढ़ाई होता है।
असली स्कूल इसलिए पसंद क्योंकि वहाँ पे फ्रेंड्स भी होते हैं।
लंबे समय से होता है 7 से 1 बजे, और ऑनलाइन स्कूल सिर्फ 2 घंटे के होते हैं, तो क्यों ऐसा क्यों?
ऑनलाइन में ज़्यादा सब्जेक्ट्स नहीं हो पाते।
It seemed to me that either child was not missing classes, but rather the school did not host that many classes. क्या आपके ऑनलाइन टेस्ट होते हैं?
हाँ, होते हैं।
और क्या कब होते हैं और किस पे होते हैं?
वैसे तो एग्ज़ाम हमारा जुलाई में होगा इस बार, लेकिन पहले मार्च में होते थे। टेस्ट जैसे कि मैम ने पढ़ा दिया कुछ साइंस का एक चैप्टर, तो उनका टेस्ट लेते।
और कैसे लेते हैं?
वो व्हाट्सएप में मैसेज कर देते हैं टेस्ट का पेपर।
आपके हिसाब से पढ़ाई करना क्यों ज़रूरी है?
क्योंकि बड़े होके कुछ बनना है, टीचर ने बोला था।
क्योंकि पढ़ाई करेंगे तभी कुछ बन पाएंगे, आगे बढ़ेंगे ज़िंदगी में।
एक फ़ोन होने से वजह से क्या मुश्किल आती है? आप क्लास मिस करते हो एक फ़ोन की वजह से?
नहीं, मेरा क्लास कभी कभी मिस हो जाता है नेटवर्क की वजह से। वैसे मेरा क्लास मैं कभी मिस नहीं करता।
कभी कभी अपने आप कट जाता है, और कभी कभी हमारा आवाज़ नहीं जाता।
Over the last 2 months, I have delved into the world of 2 children. 2 children with hopes, dreams, aspirations just like me. Some may say that they are lucky to be educated at all in a country like India. To that, I say that statement is quite telling of our current educational system. A million questions have since buzzed through my head. Is it not a human right to have the means and capacity to be educated, to process the world around us to its full potential? While those who have resources and support may eventually insulate their educational journey and get back on track, this pandemic means that millions of children are now forced to fend for themselves. The realization of their aspirations now a bleak possibility. The pandemic has caused the whole world to collapse, including the classrooms that we consider holy. It is often the case that when a structure collapses, people are met with a surprise. A crack forms on the inside, then another, and eventually it collapses before we can even realize. This is the case with our current educational system. The structure is crumbling in the interiors. Therefore, it is imminent that we act now, before our classrooms truly crumble.